Welcome back to Her Birth, Her Story, where we share real birth experiences. I'm Brooke, your host, and today we're sharing a powerful reminder that birth empowerment isn't about necessarily the mode of delivery. It's about choice, knowledge, and ownership. Today's guest is Jasmine, a mom of 3. She is now a stay-at-home mom from Central Ohio. She experienced 3 C-sections. With each one, she became even more empowered by changing her surroundings, educating herself, and just learning that her birth did not need to look like anyone else's. Her story challenges the idea that empowerment has a single definition and just reminds us that informed, intentional C-section births are still deeply valid birth experiences. So today we're holding space for her journey as we continue reclaiming birth.
Can you go in and talk about what life was like maybe during your pregnancies or your births?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, with 3 kiddos, I was working full time with all 3 of them. And that was never the desire was to work full time. And I didn't realize that until after I had my first. Life during those pregnancies was it was pretty chaotic. My pregnancies are not easy. I get very sick. I'm not the type of person that's like, skipping through a field of daisies and is like, I love being pregnant. That's just not my story at all. But the end result, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Like every time, I'm like, yeah, this is great. Pregnancy, not so much, just very sick, very uncomfortable. I'm short. I'm shorter. I'm 5'3". I have a short torso. So belly growing out, rib cage separating, like just uncomfortable. Gaining 25, 30 plus pounds. It's just like not great. But then, my labors and deliveries, like those, I would say, each one has been very different, but that's been kind of my life during those pregnancies was working full time, being exhausted with all of that, going through some very hard pregnancies and then delivering 3 beautiful children.
You had mentioned too that actually during your third that you got
Yes.
laid off while you were pregnant.
Yes.
Can you tell us how did that moment impact you?
Yeah, that was tough. Even though, like I said just a little bit ago, that being a stay-at-home mom was everything that I wanted. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. But when you're laid off, like that wasn't my choice. That was
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
I didn't get to become a stay-at-home mom because I said, "Okay, here's my 2 weeks notice. Now I'm going to
Mhm.
go be a stay-at-home mom." Like
Yeah.
I was that was a curveball that was thrown our way. And what ended up happening during that time was one, just like a slew of emotions because I'm 4 months pregnant with our third child, who was our rainbow baby, 2, a very unexpected blessing of a rainbow baby because after a miscarriage, we were like, I don't think we're going to try again. I think we're done. We're good with 2. And then we found out we were pregnant with number 3. So she was such a surprise and such a blessing. But then not having income, right?
Yeah.
Losing my income, that just put us in a season where we were like just unsure of what we were going to do. So a lot of stress around that, but also peace at the same time. And I just think that our faith, we are huge believers. And I just think God was laying a path for us because it ended up being, even though a very challenging pregnancy because I was sick every single day for
Oh,
9 months,
yeah.
just very uncomfortable. It was very peaceful at the same time. Like I was actually able to rest. I could lay down. I didn't have to wake up for work and focus on work and raising a toddler and getting our son to school and picking him up. Like, I just had to, like my husband stepped up and, he was able to help out in other areas. And then I could just kind of be at home and slow down and grow our baby, and all of
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely a stressful time, but also God brought in the peace and it was great. I can't complain.
You had said how all of your births just kind of build on each other too. And I think that it's really good for our listeners to hear them and just I'm
Mhm.
gonna let you go uninterrupted for the first one. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have an 8-year-old, and with my pregnancy with him, I mean, that one was probably my easiest pregnancy. I was what, 27 at the time? No, 20, no, I was 25. I would have been 25 at the time and 26 when I gave birth to him. So I think that has some to do with it too. Like the younger you are when you get pregnant, I think that changes like your pregnancies overall. Because I first trimester brutal, but when I hit the second trimester with him, it was like smooth sailing. And then third trimester hit, and then it was kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, ready to get this baby out. I think
Yes.
everyone
Yeah.
gets to that stage, no matter how
Yeah.
great your pregnancy is. When
For
you're in
sure.
that last, I joke around and I say the last month of pregnancy is actually a year long
Yeah.
because it takes
That's
forever.
true.
Yeah. But with his pregnancy, so it was a little bit challenging, but honestly, like, he was the easiest of all three. My labor and delivery with him, I went into labor naturally with him and started having contractions and stayed at home. Contractions got, 3 to 5 minutes apart, and we ended up going into the hospital in the morning. I think it was probably around like 10 or 11 a.m. that we went into the hospital, and they checked me, and I think I was around like 3 centimeters. And I was like, thank goodness, because I thought I was going to go in and then they were going to be like, nope, like you're not dilated, got to go home. That was like something I did not want to happen. So I was dilated and they, admitted me. And then like as they're getting all of my information in the room, they were like, do you want an epidural? And I remember thinking, like, I never, looking back at that pregnancy, I did not prepare. I prepared more for his nursery than I did for the actual birth. Like, just first time mom back in 2017, that it was just very different and just not a lot of information out there, right? Like, I think social media was just now, really becoming a thing for people to share stuff like this. So I just didn't know. And so they were like, do you want an epidural? And I was like, I mean, is the pain going to get worse than what it is now? And the nurse kind of chuckled. She was like, you're at 3 centimeter, if you want to get it, like, just get it. And I was like, okay, like, that's fine. I'll just get it. So I got it really early and then fell asleep, right? Got the epidural. The thing with the epidural, I got it 3 times for that birth because the anesthesiologist did not, like, couldn't stick it right. So he, like, stuck it, and then he was like, "Oh, I don't like where I put that at." So then he, like, pulled it out, and then he, like, stuck it again, and then I was like, "Am I supposed to be, like, hearing?" It was kinda like in the war movies, like, when everyone's like, "Wah, wah, wah, wah," like, all that I was like, things are, like, blurry and, like, it's like everyone sounds muffled, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, let me take it out."
My
And then
word.
he brought in somebody else, and so somebody else did the 3rd one. I was like,
Praise the
"Okay,
Lord.
hallelujah, 'cause
Yeah.
you're gonna stick me 3 times with that needle? Okay." So the 3rd time, got the epidural, it was fine, but again, looking back, I think it was too strong. Like, I could not feel anything, and I hated that feeling. 'Cause I was just like, I had no idea what was happening. I mean, I ended up falling asleep during the rest of the labor. They came in and checked me. I was 8.5 centimeters, and then they were like, "You're progressing great. We're probably gonna come back in, and you're gonna be at 10 centimeters." They came back in, and the lady was like, "Mm, I'm getting, like," I was supposed to be like, I'm, like, supposed to be at a 9. She was like, "I'm still getting, like, an 8. I was like, "What?" And then she's like, "And you're starting to swell. So now you're starting to go backwards." And I was just like, "You can go backwards?" So my cervix was swelling. And so they couldn't, like, how I was dilating, I wasn't fully dilating. It was like they were getting less. So it was like 8 centimeters, 7.5 centimeters. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So that was discouraging, but the nurses were amazing and they were like, it's okay. Like, they were keeping me calm and reassuring me during that whole time. But then they had already called the doctor because I was progressing, and they assumed that I was going to be close to 10 or at 10 very soon. So they called the doctor. She came in, and it wasn't my normal doctor. It was somebody that works at the practice, but who I did not see regularly. So she immediately came in, what didn't really have great bedside manner, checked me and was like, "Yep, your cervix is swelling. We're going to have to do a C-section," just like right away. Yeah. Very just like cold, to the point, almost like, "You wasted my time, like, let's get this done. We're not even gonna sit here and let you labor." So that was, like, shocking, first time mom, you're in there, like, everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden you're just hit with this, and not that a C-section's bad, but it's just not, especially if you're not planning for one or expecting
Yeah.
one. When you hear those words, you're just like, "Wait, wait, wait, I'm supposed to do this quote unquote the natural way. I'm supposed to have a baby the natural way. Like, I don't want to have a C-section. It's a major surgery. There's so many unknowns." So there was a lot of fear, anxiety, stress, uncertainty, and then his heart rate starts fluctuating. So then his heart rate starts dropping. So then I'm worried about him, and I'm, freaking out, and it was just a whole ordeal. So fortunately, my husband, who is absolutely incredible, he was very calming, and he was very supportive, and he was like, you know, like, "We'll do basically like whatever you want to do. Like, how are you feeling? Everything's going to be okay. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can have a few minutes to like talk it through." And the doctor wasn't really budging much. She was like very much so pressuring us, like, you can sit here and labor for another hour, but you're going to have a C-section anyway. So we might as well just do one. So we ended up, I mean, again, we just felt very pressured and very scared. We didn't want to make a decision that was going to hurt our unborn child. So we were like, okay, let's do the C-section. So we did the C-section. It was very uncomfortable, very scary, just harsh lights, and, you're in a very vulnerable position. You just want to make sure your baby's okay. He was born, lungs were great, screaming, crying, like all of that. It was amazing. And then the recovery after that was really challenging, solely because I felt like my body had failed me. I felt like I literally remember saying this, like, I couldn't do the one thing that our body was designed to do. Like, we're supposed to have babies, we're supposed to be able to deliver babies vaginally, and I had to have a C-section. What's wrong with me? Why couldn't I do that? And then we struggled with breastfeeding, and he wouldn't latch on. And then it was like, I can't do another thing that we're supposed to be able to do. So then it just kept kind of compounding on top of each other of all these things. And so I did slip into like the baby blues and all of that. And, I came out of it eventually, but that first child, that first birth experience was definitely like, it was low key traumatizing, to the
Sure.
point where I was like, you know, I'm like, I want to have another one, but we're going to wait a while until we have another baby. And I'm grateful that we did, because the distance between our first and second, so he's 8 and we have an almost 4-year-old, so about 3.5, 4 years between them. And it was enough time for me to learn and to get around other moms and to get around other women who have had varying pregnancy experiences and birth experiences.
For
And
sure.
I was just like, I didn't even know that that all of this is possible, right? That you could
Yeah.
have, even you have one C-section, you can try for a VBAC, and or you could have another C-section, you can schedule it, or you could have a home birth, like all of these different options that are out there. I started to recognize between my first and second baby.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sorry though that your provider, treated you like that, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's one of the most disheartening things too is you are literally putting your life essentially
Yeah.
kind of in their hands, and
Yeah.
your trust too, and you are there to trust them that they are going
Right.
to support you. No, like, your doctor should be wanting to encourage you, and if it's not an emergency, if it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that is emergency right there, they should be trying to, coach you to do different things that might help promote to get the
Mm-hmm.
baby out,
Yeah.
instead of just like, because I don't think that having a C-section is the easy way out, but I do
Right.
think that doctors make it sometimes an easy way out for them
Yeah.
instead
Yes.
of letting the mom birth. I don't think that
100%.
moms come in and if you have a C-section, that's the easy way out because to be
Right.
honest, just like you said, the recovery part,
Oh
yeah,
gosh, yeah.
that's
Feel your lower abdominals. You don't even realize how much you use your core until you're trying to get out of bed to nurse or
yeah,
to pick up a newborn and you're like, "Wait a second. Like I can't move." I
yeah,
physically like Ian would have to like roll me over so that I could like get out of bed, and it
yeah,
was definitely challenging. And you're
yeah,
absolutely right. Like the provider, it felt more like, okay, how can we free this bed up? Like, how can we move on? Like I was just
yeah,
a number. Like, let's
yeah,
herd her out and get somebody else in here. I've got somewhere to go. That was kind of the mentality. But I will say that the nurses, I have always, every single pregnancy, the nursing staff has been incredible. I've had
that's
the
awesome.
best nurses who like they've sat with me and they've talked with me and they've like, hey, if you want to like I this one nurse came up to me during my labor with my first, and she was like, I've seen moms who have had the same thing happen and they've still birthed their babies vaginally. So it is possible. Like even just that little, that vote of confidence of like, hey, I've seen it happen before and they've birthed their babies. Like I haven't forgotten that. So
Yeah.
the nurses are amazing.
Yeah, and that just goes to show too that your supporting staff, like, around you, your support
Mm-hmm.
system around you in birth is
Yeah.
really crucial. Can you just kind of touch on, how this experience, changed the way that maybe you would, go into your second birth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really, one, I was patient and I was like not gonna jump right into having baby number two. And then also it allowed me to really learn about other experiences and ask questions and figure out, okay, I didn't like this about my birth with my first. So, does anybody else have that experience? Is there anybody else that can relate to what I went through? Or if not, what did they do differently? And so, I knew that for the second time around that I was going to be much more prepared, and that included from a faith perspective, like making sure like my faith foundation was strong, making sure that my education around birth, went up, and I was going to spend more of my time during my second pregnancy learning about and preparing for labor and delivery versus preparing for the stuff like for a newborn, because when a newborn comes, they don't need a lot.
Yeah,
They don't need
true.
a lot, and so I'm like, okay, even if nothing is ready and I've got, a few onesies and diapers and wipes, okay, we're good, all right? Like,
Yeah,
we got the bottles in case breastfeeding doesn't work out, we've got formula, okay, we're good, and even if none of that's there, like, the hospital sends you home with some stuff too, so it was like, worst case scenario, the baby's gonna be okay and it's gonna be taken care of. But it's like going through the labor and delivery. I wanted to make sure that like I was good, that my mental was good, that I was prepared, and that I could advocate for myself. So then that led into like researching doulas. And I was like, okay, I want to try for a VBAC the next time around. And yeah, let's see how it goes. So I knew that I needed support in that because the hospital is not set up for you to be able to give birth vaginally. Like they're trying to
mhm,
get the baby here safely, like by any means necessary. And
mhm,
yeah, it's not a conducive place when you think about like all the harsh lights that are on you, all of the distractions, everyone coming in and out of your room, the constant interventions, whether that's you getting induced, if that's Pitocin or I think Cytotech or something. There's another
yeah,
one. The cervical checks, just, yeah, all of it. The monitors beeping,
for
everything is
sure.
such a distraction. And I'm like, I totally understand why animals go into a dark corner and labor.
Sure.
I totally get it.
Did you have to overcome any emotions too from the traumatic first
Hmm.
experience to really go into your second, maybe more positive or more confident?
Yeah, there was fear. There was still that voice of like, my body's not designed to give birth. naturally the doubt definitely creeped in of like what I was capable of doing. And then also that phase of me was a lot more timid when it came to sticking up for myself and advocating for myself. I definitely feel like a veteran mom now with 3 where I'm like, "Nope." Like,
Yep.
no, no is a complete sentence, and I feel a lot more
Yes.
confident in saying that, but
Yes.
after baby number 1, I didn't have my voice, and it's then that also, like, I felt like took my voice away a little bit. And then baby number 2, preparing for that, I was like, "Okay, I need to have a voice, but I'm still kinda scared to, like, speak up for myself," especially when I'm starting to hear stories from friends of mine who have had home births, who have had water births, even in like, a hospital setting or, like, a birthing center. Very different than how I grew up, very different than what I had known. Breastfeeding was also another thing that like I didn't really see growing up. I didn't really have a lot of people within my own community that breastfed. So it was a little bit foreign. So then just again, being able to advocate for yourself for things that you're not familiar with, it's scary because you're like, wait, this is going against the grain. This is going against you go into labor, you go into the hospital, you get the epidural, you labor with the epidural, you get to 10 centimeters, you have your baby versus like, wait, when you get to 10 centimeters, that doesn't mean that your baby's coming. You also have to like labor down and they have to be, in the right, like, yeah, in the right
Yeah.
station and all of that. So, all of these things that I had to learn and relearn about birth and that it
Mhm.
doesn't look the same for everybody. And yeah, that was kind of going into it. I had to really work through those emotions and that fear also around pain because I was
Mm.
like, I felt like I had a low pain tolerance. I was like, can I even handle labor pains?
Okay.
So just yeah, the emotional side I had to prepare a lot for that. And then so going into my second birth, that pregnancy again was very hard, very challenging. I was just sick and uncomfortable and more sick than I was with my son. So it went on beyond the first trimester. So when I was, 15, 16, 17 weeks and I'm still nauseous and still throwing up, I was like, is this going to end? Like, wait a
Oh,
second. I'm not going to be that. That's not going to happen this time around. I was like expecting to get to second trimester and like, okay, I'll
yeah.
have like a reprieve, but that did not happen. So it was pretty much, there was like maybe I could probably count on one hand how many days I had where I wasn't nauseous.
Yeah.
So it just kind of felt like the flu the whole time. So
Yeah.
just very miserable. And
Yeah.
then when I was 6.5, 7 months pregnant, I got COVID pneumonia with her. And I went in because I couldn't keep any water down. And they were like, yeah, you need to go in and get checked. So I went in and got checked. They tested me for COVID. I tested positive, and then they took a scan and they were like, and you have bilateral pneumonia. My oxygen was low, and they were like, we got to admit you to the ICU. And I was like, that escalated quickly. So I
Yeah.
got admitted into the ICU and I was there and it was hard because that was 2021. But it wasn't in the height of COVID, but it was still pretty fresh, It was 2021. So
Yep.
I was in the ICU. It was lonely. Nobody could come to visit because my husband also had COVID. So he's taking care of a 4-year-old and he has COVID too. So it was just a very hard position to be in and to be away. So I was in the ICU there. Then they moved me over to a maternity ward at a different hospital. And when they transferred me over to that hospital, that's when things started to go downhill, where I just wasn't getting great care. I was kind of left alone and told, we're going to help you with this. And like, we're going to get a physical therapist in here where you'll be able to go in the hallway and kind of walk and see how your breathing is doing because we want to make sure that your oxygen stays at a certain level because as your oxygen dips, then the baby's not getting, what the baby needs. And again, it was just a lot to go through at that time. And
For
then just
sure.
the emotions and not, I couldn't breathe. Like I couldn't talk hardly in that like while I was there. So it was very again hard to advocate for myself. So that was challenging. And then I decided, because I was like, you know what? I need fresh air. I need my house. I need my husband and my son. I need to get out of here. And they're not really giving me like any sign of when I'm going to be able to leave. And they're saying one thing and then doing another. So I left. I was like, against their advice, I was like, okay, like I'm leaving. And then all the doctors came in at that point, and I was like, where have you been the last 5 days? Like, oh, it just took me saying like, okay, peace out, I'm out. And then they're like, wait. Then they really tried to like fear monger and tell me that if I left, like I was going to kill my baby, and I was making a terrible decision. And I was just like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I just wish you would, you know, encourage me and just tell me like if I get worse, like to come back immediately. And that never happened. And that told me a lot, that they weren't encouraging me like, hey, if you start getting sick again or you feel worse, like come back immediately. They were very much so like, your baby's gonna die and this, that, and the other. So I trusted my gut. I trusted God in that moment that I was not supposed to be there. And a whole other story that I could go down of like how I know that that decision was right. But one story is that she's here, right? She's 4 years old now and she's thriving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a couple months later, I give birth to her. I don't go into labor. So I ended up getting induced. Because she was due on the 3rd of November, and then on the 10th of November I'm still very pregnant, still very uncomfortable, and I decided to get induced because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta.
Yeah.
It's just been a very, very long pregnancy, and so I was just ready, and I felt comfortable making that decision. And I didn't mention this, but I switched doctors from the last time, and I found a doctor that was VBAC friendly. And VBAC, if people don't know what VBAC is, it's a vaginal birth after cesarean. And so she was a VBAC friendly doctor, and I had a doula with me, and I was talking with her a lot about my decision to be induced. And I was like nervous because I was like, if I get induced, like, is that going to make a VBAC harder, and this, that, and the other? And she was very encouraging. She was like, she kind of shot it to me straight. Like, it does make a VBAC harder. Going into labor naturally is like the best option for a VBAC, but people have gotten induced and had a VBAC. So we weighed the pros and cons, and then I decided to go in. So I went in and I had a full birth plan. I gave that to the nursing staff. I gave that to my doctor. My doula was ready. Ian was on board. I was like, I'm not getting an epidural for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I had a safe word just in case, because I had never labored without an epidural before. Hi. You want to say hi? This is the second. So I labored for 20 hours without an epidural, and I'm so happy that I did, because I got to like fully experience it. So it was very night and day difference from my first labor to this one, because the first one I didn't feel anything for majority of it because the epidural was so strong. And then this one, are you going to join me?
Yeah.
Okay, you can sit there. And then the second one with her, I labored for 20 hours and felt everything. But I also had Pitocin and was induced, so that my contractions were very, very, very strong, very painful. And I was handling it fine until I wasn't. And then I called for my safe word, and I was like, I think I need the epidural because I'm not handling this well anymore. And I made those decisions. So I made the decision to get induced. I made the decision to get the epidural. I made the decision to get a doula. Like, all of these decisions that I made, I was very empowered, and I felt a sense of control making that decision, which I did not have in my first pregnancy. So I had that. And then, just a funny story, my husband pushed back just a little bit. He was like, no, you're not going to get an epidural. Like, you said you didn't want one, And he was like, I was like, hey, I appreciate it, because he knew I really wanted a VBAC. But I told him, I said, I came in with a plan, but I was good with the plan changing. And a lot of that just had to do with surrendering to God and to God's will, and to not having to control everything, or that birth had to look a certain way. It was just about being confident in the decisions that I was making, having informed consent, and making a decision that kept, one, my mental health intact, but then also brought forth me, a healthy mom afterwards, and a healthy baby as well. Like all three of those things. It wasn't just like, you know, healthy baby and healthy mom. It was like also mental health included in that as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a lot more empowering. And I had the epidural. I ended up getting that. And then the same thing started happening that happened with my first pregnancy. And it was my cervix started to swell. So I was almost to 10 centimeters, and then my cervix started to swell, and I was going backwards. You know, they were like, I'm only getting you to about 8.5 centimeters. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's happening again. They were like, we can give you like Tylenol, and we can put you in different positions and do all of this. And we did everything. Like we tried every single thing that we could. And then her heart rate started fluctuating and dropping a lot. And that's scary to hear when you're in that situation. And so because that had happened before and because we did every single thing that we could think of, I felt confident. I was like, I want to have a C-section. Like I'm ready. I feel comfortable. I trust my doctor. My doctor was sitting there the whole time watching me before I had the epidural, and I remember telling her, I was like, I'm not handling these contractions very well. And she was like, do you want the epidural? She was like, like really just like getting on my level and like asking. She was like, if you want it, we can get it. If you want to keep laboring, we can try different positions. She was so encouraging. And that just the staff, my doctor, my husband, my doula, everyone being on board and supporting me in that moment was a game changer. So I end up having my C-section. And I remember after my C-section, I look at my husband and I was like, that was way different than the first time around. I could do that again. You know, like if I have another baby, I'm just going to schedule a C-section because that was so easy. It's recovery, like within a couple hours of getting back to the room, I was up walking around, which was very different than my first time.
Wow.
I don't even remember if they encouraged me after my son to like get up and move, but like this time around, like that's like so important. If you have a C-section, like get up and walk around because it just like helps with healing. And yeah. And then just weeks after, like I was just moving around so much better, and it definitely felt a lot better than, my first experience. I still had some baby blues that creeped up, but it was nothing crazy.
Mhm.
It was definitely all manageable. So that was my second experience.
Shout out to your doctor too. I'm just really glad that she was encouraging you to still do that. For our listeners too who might not know what a
Yeah.
doula is. So why did you seek out a doula, and what did that look like during your pregnancy and your
Absolutely.
labor?
So I sought out a doula. One, a doula is somebody who's very well versed on all things birth and pregnancy too. Like she was so knowledgeable, and it was nice to be able to bounce questions off of her. And because one, she has helped a lot of women in those situations. And then two, she studies it, right? Like she's not a doctor, she's not an OB or a midwife. She's not going to deliver babies, but she's going to sit there and help to advocate for you. So she knows my preferences. She knows what I'm trying to accomplish during this birth. She knows like if I have questions regarding breastfeeding afterwards. And that was something that happened with my daughter. She was there to help me with breastfeeding because I think she was also certified lactation consultant too. So she was able to help with breastfeeding and answer questions that I had and help with positioning and all this. It was a game changer. It was so different to have, I have my husband who is an amazing support person, like in there with me, helping me handle contractions. Like would not want to do that without him. The doula added another layer of where he didn't know, where he wasn't familiar with. She was able to step in and be a voice, and it was kind of like a voice for both of us. in areas that maybe we didn't know, and to just help us to feel empowered in our decisions, to even just say, like, there were times where she would just say,
Yeah.
hey, can we have 5 minutes? When they would come to us and talk to us about something, she would be like, thank you for all of that information. Can we have 5 minutes to think about it? And then she would look at us and be like, if Ian and I wanted to talk about it, or if we wanted us three to talk about it, like she would, give us that space where she would excuse herself, or she would be in there with us and we would all kind of talk about it, especially giving us an opportunity to ask her questions. So just an awesome birth support person.
Especially for your first,
Hmm.
or if you're trying for a VBAC like you were, or just if you're wanting to feel more
Yeah.
empowered too going into it, a doula is a
Hmm.
key, especially in the
Yes.
hospital setting. I feel personally that it is really hard to birth in a hospital because of how much of an advocate you have
Hmm.
to be for yourself, because you're already in
Yeah.
a vulnerable position, and just all the
Yeah.
questions, all the medical stuff, all of these things, that a doula is amazing to help with that. And they also, help with positions and stuff too.
Yeah, and pain relief, like if my husband has been squeezing my hips and he's like, I need a break,
Hip
right? He
squeeze,
could
yep.
tap out and then she would come in and do some hip
Yep.
squeezes. And, there was a moment where it's like
Yeah.
I went down, I would I was laboring down. And so I would kind of squat and he was like holding me, but then she would come behind and do the hip squeezes.
Yeah.
So it was like this double tag team effort
Wow.
to help, and it's just like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
priceless, when you have people like supporting you in such a
Sure.
vulnerable and emotional moment.
I know that you obviously
Yeah.
attempted a VBAC and it
Yes.
ended in a C-section, but you have also said that, this birth kind of felt a little bit more
Yeah.
healing just because it's way different than your first. Can you speak to why it was healing?
I kept saying redemption. That was like, it was a very redemptive birth experience. And it was because even though it ended the same way, it ended differently. I made the decision. I made the call. I could have continued to labor if I wanted to. Like my doctor was good with that. My husband was there with me and supportive. Like I had all the support to continue laboring. I was just exhausted, and I just felt very, with all the information that was given me to me. And probably what people will hear as a
Mhm.
reoccurring theme for me is informed consent. Like having everything and being able to say, this is what I want to do with all the information given to me. And that's what I was able to do. And that's why it was so redemptive, because that was taken away from me. My first time, I didn't feel like I had to say. I
Mhm.
felt like, and part of that, I will take responsibility for not preparing a lot for birth and for labor. So I didn't know, like,
Yeah.
maybe I should wait to get an epidural and like see how I'm handling the contractions before I just jump into the epidural. See how let your body feel and see how you respond before, like, not letting the fear of the unknown get cause you to just jump into the epidural. But then when the doctor came in, who didn't have a relationship with me, who kind of rushed me into that, like, oh, we just have to do a C-section, that just like, it felt like it took away my voice in that. And then obviously
Mhm.
with all of that happened, having that C-section and then it being like painful and a hard recovery, you look at that and it's just hard and emotional and draining. Then to go to this experience where it's redemption.
I always love hearing
Mhm.
redemption stories and stuff too, just because I think that those are just so
Yeah.
empowering all in itself. And, that kind of leads
Yes.
into now your third birth, right? And you had mentioned that it was your most
Yeah.
peaceful birth.
It's so funny because it's like I sit here and I talk about, I love birth for one. I love, like, I'm the type of person, Brooke, and I know you know this, like somebody's like has a birth story. I'm like, give my popcorn, let's go. Like I'm ready. Give me all the details. Do not leave
Yes.
anything out. Like I want to hear it. And then
Yes.
I say all of this, I talk about my birth experiences, and a lot of people would be like, with C-section, and like you had mentioned at the beginning, as a failure. So it's like, oh, you've had 3 C-sections? And I'm like, nah, I've had victory, even though they ended in C-sections. Like my second and third birth were victorious because of the redemption that I received. And my third experience was peaceful. because even though the second C-section was a lot better of an experience, like my pregnancies are hard, what I went through being in the ICU in the hospital with COVID and pneumonia, and just knowing what it felt like to recover from a C-section, even though it was much easier the second time around, I still was like, I mean, any birth, right? It takes you what, 2 years to fully recover. And so I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that again. I'm like that's a lot. That's 3 full years
Yeah,
of your
for
body
sure.
not feeling like your
Yep.
own. I think I'm done. And then I found out I was pregnant a year after um my second, and then I had a miscarriage. And then I was like, I'm definitely done, because I was like, I don't want to go through that again, because that was awful and I would not wish that on anybody. It was just absolutely terrible. So I really didn't want to do it again. I did. It was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise at the same time. So I saw it and I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, that wasn't in the plan, but
Yeah.
it's in God's plan. And it was hard pregnancy again, but again, my faith was stronger. I'm older and wiser and more rooted in my faith than ever before. And my word for my second pregnancy was redemption. That's what I was seeking. And then my
Mhm.
word for my third pregnancy was surrender. And it was just surrendering myself to God's will, because there was a lot of fear after my miscarriage. And I think that was a huge part of why I didn't want to have a third, because I was so scared to have another miscarriage. And then again, just to go through the challenges of, not feeling like myself, and yeah, all of that. So I had to surrender. I had to just accept the challenge. I had to let go of the fear. I had to trust that God was going to carry me through. And I did that through the whole pregnancy. And it's so interesting because, there was a part of my life where faith was taught to me as though if you believe big enough, if you believe hard enough, God's going to give you the desires of your heart. And yes, but within like context of who God is and what he wants for you. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have challenges in our life and that we're not going to have struggles. So
Exactly.
old me, and when I was pregnant with my second daughter, I was like praying that he would take away that sickness, right? Like take it away, and I got to pray harder and pray more, and
Yeah.
he'll take it away, he'll take it away. And he didn't. And that, like, luckily for me, I didn't like hold that against him, like, oh, he didn't take it away from me.
Yeah.
Or even myself, like, oh, I didn't have big enough faith, he didn't take it away from me. But this time around, because I was more rooted in my faith and because I understood scripture better and I understood God's character, I was like, it's not about him taking this away, but it's about him carrying me through and giving me
Mhm.
peace through the pain and through the discomfort. And that's exactly what happened. That my third pregnancy, I was able to laugh through it. Somebody asked me, "Hey Jazz, like how are you? How's pregnancy?" I was like, "It sucks." Like it's awful. And I was honest, but I also didn't sit in it. I wasn't like, bleeding on people and being like, just this miserable person to be. I was just like, I'm struggling. It's hard. But we would laugh,
Yeah.
and then we would move
Yeah.
on. I would drink my Diet Coke and then we would, that saved me, that carried me through.
Yes.
And so I just
Yeah.
kept telling myself too, like, she's going to be here. Like, she will be here. And then another thing that helped me was taking the pressure away. So it takes a lot to prepare for birth. And fortunately, we have 9 months to do so, but it's a lot. Like, I spent a lot of time my second pregnancy preparing for my labor and delivery. So I remember talking to my husband and I was debating, do I do a C-section? Do I try for a VBAC after 2 cesareans? Like, what do I do? And I prayed on that and I talked to my husband, and what felt right was to schedule a C-section. And I went to the same doctor that delivered our daughter, and I talked with her about it, and I didn't make a decision until I was a little over halfway. But I was like, let's schedule it. And I also found out that I was high risk. I had a high risk pregnancy. There was some sort of like gene that I carried and that my husband carried, and it just put me at high risk for whatever reason. So I had two like high risk reasons, previous C-sections, and then, this gene abnormality or whatever. So I walked through that and I was like, let's do a C-section, a scheduled C-section. And when I tell you how much mental real estate that freed up for me, I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to think about what to do because I had done it twice already. And I had done it once with this doctor. So I knew. And so that just like was so freeing. And I was able to, like I told you before, I was able to rest a lot. So then I go in for the scheduled C-section and it was fast. It was, the longest part was just waiting, like getting the IV and all that stuff put in and waiting. And then I went into the room. And again, it kind of makes me emotional a little bit because I really have had amazing like nurses around me and like, just like, staff. And I remember going into the operating room and I get up on the table and it's cold, right? The room's cold. It's bright white. You're visible to everybody in that room in just a second. But everyone is so kind. They're like, what music do you want on? And just smiling. And the anesthesiologist, I remember he like came up and like got close to my face and just talking so gently and was just like, just walking me through what was going to happen. Like, we're going to do the spinal. This is what you're going to feel. Because I had epidurals before. So then I had a spinal this time around and it's very different. But he was like, you're going to feel heavy from the waist down and we'll help, we'll lean you back and you're not going to feel any pain. If you feel nauseous, just let us know. Like all of these things, like he was just being so kind and so gentle. And I'll never forget that. And again, it just put me at peace. And I just knew I just knew God was just covering me in that moment. Through the whole pregnancy and everything. My doctor, she cleaned up my scars, cleaned up scar tissue. So it looks even better than it did beforehand. I was in and out 15 minutes and we had our baby in our arms.
Which is the best moment anyways, is in all stories, the baby on your chest or in your arms is literally
that cry when
like
they come out. And it's so interesting too. So with C-sections, I've watched births. I've heard birth stories, vaginal birth stories. So I know like the physiological side of birthing vaginally. And it's like there's this moment of like where you're just like you're pushing and then it's like this release, right? Like where it's like and then like this release, the baby comes out. The same thing happens during a C-section, actually. So like the doctor takes their forearm and they push right above, like your sternum and the top of your uterus. They take their forearm and they push down. And when they do, you gasp because they're like it takes the wind out of you. So it's like you gasp, I'm like, and then they pull the baby out right when that happens. Like, yeah, it's a very cool experience, like
That's
feeling.
crazy.
And they pull the baby out and then the baby's crying and it's just, yeah, I mean, instant flood of emotions and tears.
Did you like opt for anything different in actual procedure or did you just kind of let them do whatever?
Yeah, so I still had a birth plan of like what I wanted in my C-section. So I was like, I want a
Love that.
gentle cesarean, so like music playing because it wasn't an emergency, it was scheduled, it's slow, like slower vibe, slower pace, calm, relaxing, clear curtain. I wanted the baby to be placed on me immediately, which there was a little bit of confusion, I think, with Zuri, with our 4-year-old. I think they wrapped her first and then they laid her on me.
Gotcha.
But with my third child, my second daughter, I think they had the receiving blanket, but they didn't wrap her. They just like came and like put her on me and then put the blanket over both of us. So it was, yeah, that was perfect.
That's nice.
And actually with my spinal, I was like, "Ian, I think you need to take the baby," because that made me a little I didn't love of everything, like, the
Yeah,
epidural and then having a C-section felt better. The
yeah,
spinal, I didn't love
gotcha,
the spinal. It would definitely made me, like, more out of it and
gotcha.
loopy for sure, which I didn't love.
Vision that people have sometimes of what birth should be like, which is great, but also, like, you can still
Mhm.
have a moment like that in
Yeah,
a planned C-section, and I think that's
absolutely.
important for people to know because I feel like that's a big misconception too that, you know, C-section is just strictly medical. You get robbed of
Yeah.
all of these things, and sometimes that might be the truth, but, you can
Mhm.
still advocate for yourself and have a solid experience and still
Mhm.
get that moment that every mother just, like, dreams of, and I think that is, like,
100%. I couldn't agree.
amazing.
You have a lot of benefits from birthing vaginally that you do miss out on from a C-section perspective. However, if you do end up having a C-section, I always encourage people to prepare for what a C-section looks like and know what that looks like. And then a huge part for me is being okay with things changing because birth, things can change very quickly. And so it's like being okay if
Yeah,
something changes and you've got to shift from plan A to plan B, I think is like just a huge part of what I talk about and how I talk to other moms about
yeah,
their birth experience. Like people will ask me about my experiences and I'm like, I'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, but don't take my experience and put it on yourself. Like yours could be completely different. Like I have a friend who she is skipping through, daisy fields during her pregnancy and she's like, more beautiful
yeah,
now than she ever has been in her life. I felt like I looked like a troll through my pregnancy. That's just how it was, but it's like it's okay, right? Everyone has different
yeah.
experiences and I think we just, we could hear these stories and take what we can glean from it, but then, also leave some things on the table if we need to.
You are passionate about helping people feel comfortable, like, shifting from plan A to plan B. When did you personally, like, learn that
Mhm.
power of flexibility in birth, and, what makes you so
Yeah, I
passionate
mean, I
about that?
think it was progression, from the first to the second to the third that I took pieces each time of things can change drastically. And I've always been pregnant with friends, like friends of mine who are pregnant or sisters pregnant at the same time. And our births are always very different. And so just having that
Mhm.
mindset and just understanding that, like, we're human beings. One, as from a human level, we're all different. So that's the exact same
Yes.
thing from a birth experience standpoint. It's all going to be different. We're all going to have react to an epidural differently. We are all going to react to labor pains differently. One woman might have, a supernatural birth where she doesn't feel anything and the baby just slides right out, and it's just great. And other mom, like you might prepare as much as you want for that, and that's just not your story, and that's not the case, and it's okay. And so I think I learned that, having that flexibility because I've had 3, even though they've all ended the same from a C-section standpoint, they've all been 3 very different birth experiences.
I really think that this is an important piece to hit on because a lot of people think that if their plans
Mhm.
change, they are a failure. Or if they end in a C section and they wanted a vaginal birth, then they are a failure. What would you say to those moms who are maybe
Yeah, and
struggling
that
with that
breaks my
right now?
heart because I've been there, and like I said, after my first, I definitely had that feeling of feeling like I had failed. But the thing that I would share with moms who feel like that is that your body didn't fail. Things happen, like we've been talking about, things change very quickly in birth. There are things that you can control, like when you go to the hospital and, all that sort of thing, like how long you labor at home versus when you decide to go to the hospital. And I think when you go into the hospital, that starts to create a system that's set up against you. So it's not necessarily you failing, but it's you being in a part of a system that is set up for you to fail, quote unquote fail. I don't even think fail is the right word, but if you have already had a C-section, your body didn't fail. You were part of a system that was set up against you. And so it was kind of this uphill battle. And if you had a C-section and it was hard and hard to recover from and traumatizing, there's redemption on the other side of that. Like you can take back, your birth experience the next time that you get pregnant. You can have a completely different birth experience. Even if it does end in a C-section again, you can change how that experience goes. And there are different ways to be able to do that. But your body didn't fail you. I think just having the right support team around you, they're going to help to make sure that everything, goes smoothly and, keeps you healthy, keeps you safe, and keeps the baby safe as well.
Biggest message to that I have been getting from is that your birth doesn't have to
Yeah,
look
right.
like others' births. What does
Yeah.
that mean
I mean,
to
we
you?
live in an age of social media, the comparison game. We see everybody's highlight reel. So, kind of my takeaway from the comparison game that we have is that your birth doesn't have to look like everybody else's, because you're going to see a lot, if you go looking for birth videos and birth stories and all of that. And on the flip side of that, women who have had traumatic birth experiences, your birth does not have to look like everybody else's. So your birth also does not have to be traumatic. Take what you can and learn, but also leave what you need to leave. And don't, fill your mind with a bunch of traumatic and awful and scary birth experiences, but just be prepared and just know a lot of different things can happen and just know what to do. Don't sit there and dwell
sure.
on all the bad things that could happen, or, oh, you heard this story and that story and this story, all these traumatic things that happen, but just know that, yeah, stuff can happen. Know what to do in the event that those things might happen, and then move on and focus on the good and having a more positive birth experience.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here with one question that I ask every mom that comes on our podcast. If you could speak one piece of empowering wisdom into the hearts of mothers listening, what would that be?
That's such a good question. I would say that your body was made to do this, and you are stronger than you think. I've talked about some of my birth experiences, young girls who want to be moms one day, and I kind of see the look in their face. There's a little bit of fear. There's a little bit of like, whoa, I don't know if I could do that, and that it's scary for them. And I get it because I was there, and the unknowns of birth, and you don't know how you're going to handle contractions. You don't even know what it feels like. You hear some pretty heart-wrenching stories, or just some scary stories, but you are stronger than you think. And when it comes to our children, you will do more than you think before you have kids. Like you just don't even know yet, like, what you are willing to do for your
Yeah.
children. And it goes with carrying those babies and birthing them and bringing them earthside. You unlock a new part of you. That, like, the mother bear analogy is so true. Like, your body's not
Yeah.
broken. You are fully capable, and you were made for this.
I think that really will encourage our listeners. And, Jasmine, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story and coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brooke.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Birth, Her Story. Jasmine's experience just reminds us that empowerment doesn't come from one type of birth, but from knowledge, intention, and autonomy that you bring into it. Her journey through these 3 C-section births just shows us that birth does not have to look like anyone else's to be powerful. This is your birth. This is your baby. You get the say. If you're preparing for or healing from a C-section, let this just be a reminder that your birth is still valid and it's still yours. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to Her Birth, Her Story. If this episode resonated with you and empowered you, please share it with another mama who needs that same encouragement. And don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and review the show. This helps us get these stories out to more women. And remember, no matter where or how you give birth, this is your body, your baby, and your birth. We are reclaiming birth one story at a time.